I think we're there. Everybody, good afternoon. Welcome to our Resonate webinar today on Future Proof, the Navigating Trust and Certainty in the New Data-Driven Landscape. I wanted to give an introduction here. I'm Jonathan Ricard, and I'm joined by Katie Holdsworth, the Chief Operating Officer of Booyah, and Dan Gallagher, the Chief Strategy Officer of Booyah, for our presentation today. So we're going to dive in, and I'm going to let different folks provide a little bit of introduction to themselves as we get started, and as a process of letting everybody join over the first couple of minutes of today's webinar. Just as a little bit of background as to why we're here today. Resonate is focused on delivering a more personalized world with unparalleled consumer data, intelligence, and technology for agencies and brands to leverage in driving better and smarter marketing and advertising. Again, I'm Jonathan Ricard, and Chief Strategy Officer at Resonate. I've been with Resonate for just almost 9 years, leading our initiatives across agencies and our strategy for business. Really excited today to talk about this intersection of uncertainty, AI, and kind of the changes that are coming to the agency space. So with that, I will let Dan and Katie introduce yourselves. A little bit about Booyah as we go through.
Hi, everyone. I am Katie Holdsworth. I am Booyah's Chief Operating Officer. I've been with the company for just celebrated my 16th anniversary and have years and years of agency leadership experience. So I hope some of that is valuable to you today. I work with some of our largest clients, just overseeing the strategy there, and then oversee all of our client services and delivery teams at Booyah. And we're happy to partner with Resonate today. We were selected as the Agency of the Year, and our partnership has been invaluable to us.
Thanks, Katie.
I'm Dan Gallagher. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer. I've been with Booyah for coming on 20 years this summer. So I've been in the agency space for a while, been with Booyah for a while, from its infancy all the way to where we are today. I oversee our overall services best practices, how we're leading in innovation, how we're getting ahead of market trends, and working to make sure that proliferates across to our account teams and our strategy teams.
Great. Well, thank you both very much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you as partners, as our Agency of the Year customers and clients, and just appreciate you taking the time to work with us on this webinar and to share some knowledge, which is well-tenured knowledge across our attendees today and the registered guests. So really delighted to have both of you here. I know one of the things we wanted to let you guys do is speak a little bit about Booyah itself, and maybe familiarize the audience who's not as familiar with what you guys do on a day-to-day.
Sure.
A little bit of background.
Yeah, absolutely. So Booyah is an independently owned digital agency based in Denver, Colorado. We have just over 100 employees, and we are known for helping our brands and clients grow through a data-driven strategy, through creative storytelling and performance media.
Great. Well, we've been delighted to be partnered with that. And I think, Katie, the last thing we were going to do, just as kind of a little bit of pieces, just to get a little bit for the audience, how you guys leverage Resonate today, what you do with us.
Yeah, so we have been customers of Resonate for 2 years now. It first came across just our radar when we were looking for a solution to back up our media planning strategy with more data, more real-time data and insights. And that has really impacted our media planning process, the types of messaging that we recommend, and overall just seeing how Resonate has evolved with the trends that we're going to be talking about today. It allows us to deliver faster insights and pivot our approach in a much faster way. So just even speaking to just the AI aspect to what Resonate is committed to, it just helps us move in a faster way.
Well, that's great, and really appreciate you sharing that with the audience. For the audience today, what we're going to have is a couple of cycles of information today. We're going to talk a little bit about why we're here, why we think the conversation is important. So we'll walk you guys through a couple of thought starters on that process. We'll have some basically a shift to a case study and a fireside chat, where there'll be some questions that we've set up with our two panelists here, and Katie and Dan, to talk through. And a case study from some specific learnings that they've had as they've leveraged Resonate and also ad-powered data in the marketplace. And then as we continue through the fireside chat, we'll leave some time at the end here, shooting to probably wrap up around 2:40 for those that are tracking this in terms of time, with some open questions from any of the audience attendees, which you can shoot through the chat function here with Zoom, and we'll be able to grab those questions and add a few into the process for everyone. So that'll be our schedule here for the next 35 minutes as we dive in and have a chance to talk through today's topics. So thank you all for being here today. One of the things that we want to talk about was, as we wrapped up 2024, Resonate looked at 2024 through the lens of our research and our insights on the U.S. consumer, and came back with an idea that we'd hopefully had put the concept of upheaval and uncertainty into our rearview window as we entered into 2025, right? That through 2024, we saw things around the TikTok ban, right? We've seen changes in how we as advertisers are going to look at reaching consumers in the market, the ongoing and persistent threat of cookie deletion by our friends over at Google, obviously regulatory impacts around the TikTok ban, certainly things around, certainly whether it's weather patterns, climate change, the ongoing war in Ukraine, certainly created a year of upheaval. And even as we finished the election cycle, right, we saw changes that were likely to be seen in things around the regulatory policies and how that would impact us as marketers and advertisers, everything from FTC regulation changes to economic policy changes. And we saw changes that started to show up with some of the larger players like Google, for example, mentioning they were going to start allowing IP address to be used in certain measurement functionality for the first time in a long time, which started to say, hey, there was a lot of uncertainty and change, but maybe we're moving on to a faster and more consistent path, right, as it relates to both our business outcomes and our consumer outcomes going into 25. Unfortunately, as we get started here on this Monday, we're at a 12-year low in consumer confidence, right? So we started the year, and I'd hoped to start a Monday off with some positive highlights. But what I really got out of our research and the work that we've been doing is that we're seeing a pretty negative start to the year as it relates to economic forecasts. So with consumer confidence at a 12-year low, what's that mean? It means ultimately that inflation uncertainty, the tariff uncertainty, job insecurity are starting to weigh on the U.S. consumer. And when we see those types of changes show up, not only in, across the consumer spectrum, right, it has implications that we're going to talk through today in our fireside chat around what matters to businesses. And specifically, how do you continue to think about investing in solutions like AI-powered insights, AI solutions in a time of economic uncertainty, right? Like how does a agency start to lean in on still investing to make certain they're going to take advantage of that change in the marketplace, right? We're also seeing, the headlines from today and the last couple of weeks around, consumers are going to spend less, right? So not only is their confidence low on the projections for the rest of the year, but consumers are starting to say they're going to spend less, and they're concerned about, everything we just mentioned, right? So that's a bit of a challenging space to be at here as we exit Q1. And I think everybody's wrapping up Q1 today. But as you exit Q1 and start thinking about the rest of the year, what does it mean for your overall forecast, right? How are we going to change the way the market looks at consumer spending and change? For those of you who don't follow Brian Weiser, he does a market forecast with a company called Madison Wall. He's a kind of I'd say a MarTech, ad tech analyst who's spun out on his own, does great work. And, his perspective right now is that he projected a high for this year going in, and he's brought down his projection about 20% from January to March 25th in terms of his projection for the growth of ad spending in our business. So now, again, that's not a 20% reduction in total spend, but I think he projected about 4.6% growth in 2025 for all of us to be excited about in terms of organic growth. And now we're seeing that reduced down to, sub 3 or just in the middle threes right now. So a reasonable reduction, certainly, to see a couple of points of growth cut off from everyone who built that into their plans, and certainly gives us a starting point to be thinking about, okay, well, what are we going to do in a place where there might be less growth, or growth is going to be harder to achieve? And Katie and Dan, I'll give you guys a chance to chime in. Are you guys seeing any conversations today around concerns around growth as you're looking at the market today?
I would say overall, and this is, as a performance-based agency, what we're not seeing yet is a blanket pullback. What we're seeing is shortened and more frequent planning cycles. Additionally, just more scrutiny from the leaders at the brands that we partner with on proving out the value of media dollars and just absolutely ensuring that the dollars invested are driving to their own growth goals. And so that is something that, we can't just look at the platform data, it's getting access to more of that business reporting on the client. And so that's what we're noticing so far.
So
Yeah.
faster. Go ahead, yeah.
The only thing I would add to what Katie said is just, in times like this when we're starting to see these headwinds, that's our trigger as an agency to just be more proactive with the data and the insights that we have at our fingertips, right? So, starting to establish benchmarks that are important to them, making sure that we're developing those POVs so they feel informed and they know that we're ahead of it too, and that we're their partner as headwinds come. We're hoping it's clouds in the distance. It's here, but is it a storm? Are we really going to hit a recession of sorts? That's what we have to start, prepping for that kind of event. So right now we are just now starting to get into that probably more proactive moment, more frequent moment, kind of like Katie said, shorter planning cycles, but really trying to get closer to the client's business and how they're seeing their own internal economics work.
Got it. So a combination of no budget pullbacks yet, but quicker assessment cycles, maybe less budget for testing or change given the uncertainty against longer term results, and then a focus on making sure you're bringing in more insights from the client to help inform success as opposed to just the KPIs you would have direct access to.
That's right.
Okay, I think that's I think that's part of what we see as kind of critical for agencies going forward is that last piece of making sure you have access to the client's data and not operating in a vacuum from their actual business results is so critical. And so many shops, I think, struggle to make sure they've talked about the value of that info sharing with their clients and make sure they've got the right data and privacy approaches to support that. The other thing we're seeing right now is that, with this consumer confidence issues is that, they're starting to change where they're buying from, right? They're going to buy cheaper brands right now. They're going to look at alternatives, right? This happens when consumer confidence is there. They look for places they can save, whether it's buying from, different products or buying from different locations and changing their process. We see as part of Resonate's research that consumers are going to make a shift away from a brand. Like they're going to chase a little bit of price sensitivity now. So as good as brand is and critical for how we market and how we ultimately build relationships with consumers, economic uncertainty can put some stress on that brand relationship. And what we have seen and what we think is really powerful is the idea of how do you leverage the most accurate data for personalization? Because consumers consistently suggest they want to work with brands that offer personalized experiences, right? They want to work with brands that they trust to give their personal data to. They want to work with brands that come up with smart personalization options for them. And they say they spend more, right? And when they actually have a personalized experience, right? When you make smart recommendations to clients, when you give them the ability to take advantage of discounts or other approaches of the personalization, they'll spend more with that brand. And when we think about kind of this challenging state of uncertainty is, there still needs to be that sense of how do I make certain as a marketer I'm investing to put the right message in front of the right consumer and doing so in a way that can scale across the business is one of the pieces that we see. And so when we think about AI, and I want to ask you guys a couple of questions about AI, the first piece is like, ultimately we see that AI is driving accuracy in consumer models, right? So how do you understand your consumer more accurately? How do you develop better models that can understand their behavior as it relates to acquisition, purchase, churn, overall retention? Accenture's ran some research that says that companies that are using AI in their decision-making process right now are 19% more likely to outperform competitors. And McKinsey's saying that precise AI models are improving marketing spend by 30%, right? And so it's leveraging AI-powered data to drive increased performance in a time of kind of economic uncertainty. And Kate, I know we talked a little bit about kind of the investment that Booyah is making against AI. As you guys are seeing this process of potentially maybe de-risking or building out, plans for 2025, where's AI sit into your spectrum today?
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to just even like the previous slide before. Like one of our investments, and Dan can chime in on this too, is to a tool like Resonate that has that real-time data that is built in. And like a perfect example of when you were talking about, just how we're leveraging the insights that we're getting from a tool like Resonate is to say, okay, for one of our clients, we know that, and these are from the psychographic insights that we're getting from Resonate. We know that the number one reason that they might buy a personal care product is to build confidence. Okay, and through also just what Dan was talking about too is, just building those benchmarks and being able to, really provide that added value. So something that we have been sharing with this particular client is, hey, instead of like the shift that we're seeing also is, okay, instead of our brands going after newness and, just relying on like all the consumers, ready to invest on like, okay, whatever that next new product is to focus in on just like, what are their hero products and sell those with messaging that we, and like insights that we've found in the Resonate platform, and like deliver those more quickly, to our clients. And then Dan can speak a little bit more to just how we think about AI at Booyah and how we're leveraging it today.
Yeah, I mean, with AI, like obviously having access to your client's data at the level that you need to actually make good model decisions is huge, right? And so some of that comes with relationship building because some clients want to share that data and some don't, right? But once you start building those models and giving them confidence that, hey, that AI modeling and predictive modeling starts really paying off, you start building that momentum with clients, right? From an operational perspective with Booyah, we're really leaning into AI in all ways to try to speed up turnaround delivery, right? We obviously see it, impact big on content and creative drafts and iterations. So we can get the ideas out faster, right? Which is huge because when you get into a time of uncertainty, test and learn is huge. You just got to get into a test and learn mode as probably even more than you usually are when the sun is shining. So, AI just speeds that all up 100%. And, we've just really tried to challenge anything that we've had best practices around that we're used to doing that takes us, maybe a little too long, right? And so we've gone back through the list of best practices and processes to say, where can we start solving this with automation, with AI? How do we start delivering that value back to our clients?
Yeah.
And just one example of that, like to follow up on what Dan was saying of like, okay, well, where do we know? Like a perfect example of this is we knew we were spending too much time on creative QA. So we built a tool where we can upload hundreds of creatives at a time to check for things like the text overlay rules, the specs that are required, and also just, like making sure that, that is transferred across all platforms too, instead of manually having to go through, and that has saved us a lot of time. So, I mean, that is what we consider to be our own investment in a tool, and certainly the big holding companies are known to do much more than that, but that is something that we're proud of.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fantastic. The idea of leveraging AI, not for the creative generation in that case, but in terms of being able to do massive automation of the review process, right? So that you don't run into some of the same concerns that we're seeing with the partners and other clients around, hey, there's still an uncertain structure around how to use AI for creative development itself, right? For final product, right? I think Dan, you mentioned using it for iteration, right? And that we use the phrase staff acceleration, right? How do you accelerate your staff with AI tools, but not replace the staff from the perspective of the final product is coming through AI, right? But you improve that iteration and time to kind of the test and learn kind of quantity cycles where then people can review that and make, final product that they share with clients and get approval on to use.
Mhm.
And are you seeing how widely have you seen AI be pushed across the organization these days? Are you seeing it across, pretty much all teams, or is there silos right now that are still reluctant to lean in?
Great question. It's funny. I think we have really incentivized the teams to find and like raise up any pockets where man, it just takes too much time. They know they're spending too much time, or it's not strategic, right? It's just not strategic. And where can we replace that with AI? And so we're starting to see the fruits of that. And I think over the next few quarters, we'll continue to see the fruits of that. But part of that is to try to find, great ideas come from all parts of your business, right? And so if you can start empowering your team leads and down to your entry level folks of how can you lean in and make something better with automation AI and give them some license to learn, train, experiment. It's amazing what will come forth. And so I think we've leaned in. We feel like we've leaned in. I think there's still more upside for us to even find more value, more speed. But once again, like you said, Jonathan, like it's not to the end part of replacing the human. It's really to the efficacy of our workflow to streamline that so we can actually be more strategic for our clients.
Yeah, I think it's great to see that, Dan, and thinking about teams taking that ownership. We do a AI roundup basically now on a monthly basis with our team. And one of the things that we had one of our client success people demonstrate was just how they were using it to turn all of their transcribed meetings with clients, with partners, into task lists, right? And really simplifying the part so they didn't miss anything, leave anything uncovered. And we're building out then, kind of the full, readout and task list from every session, just by leveraging some of the transcription features in GPT to put it into templates. So it's amazing where the innovation's coming right now, as we've kind of freed up our team to leverage OpenAI and other tools, kind of underneath a policy, of course, but starting to really lean in on having the team do that.
I think generally speaking, though, agencies are known to be adaptable. You have to be that kind of a person and be excited about that, whether it's this or even what you were mentioning to kick the meeting off of, like, okay, what are we doing about the TikTok ban? You have to pivot. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I think with things like the work, agencies are adaptable, right? You guys have to adapt to new technologies, new capabilities to really, in a lot of ways, still deliver the same value of, hey, we want to put the right message in front of the right person if we want to go back to a marketing 101 mindset, but to do so at a highly performant level and to bring I think now unique data, unique opportunity together really leads us there. So, Katie, before we jump into I think the more structured kind of conversation around the case study, just to recap for the folks on Resonate, there's a fantastic set of solutions we've talked a little bit about through here today as we get into the fireside chat. AI-powered consumer file so that you can drive real-time marketing decisions, integrated across an identity space that includes both cookies, IP address, hashed email, and all of the leading industry identities, so that we can really work with you to integrate your client's first-party data into the workflow that you see every day. We can give you insights to action across channels and make sure at the end of the day, we're reaching the right consumer at the right time. So giving you that insights at the fingertips of the agency. One of the things we're really excited about Resonate is the adoption and the day-to-day use by our clients of our technology, that we've made it easy and simple enough with new things like our AI audience builder that can truly make the process of starting to understand your clients' customers, really turnkey as we go forward. So with that, I'll ask the audience if they have confidence in their data, but I'll stop sharing and just say, Katie, you were going to share a specific, a little deep dive into an additional case study as to how you're leveraging AI-powered data.
Yeah. So I mentioned one of the reasons that we signed on with Resonate is because we thought it would help with our business development process. And so all the agencies on the phone know, like when you're pitching, yes, you get access, and you audit the accounts. What can lack is the backup to your recommendations that you're making when you see and you get access to a brand's accounts. And so a recent example is, we uploaded, and by the way, like for any agencies on the phone that haven't yet taken advantage of Resonate's first party data, upload to actually understand your customer profile, the level of insights that come from that data, not just plugging in the target consumer, have been immense for us. And so what we found when we uploaded this customer file is hey, video is going to pop, and specifically within video UGC. And so then when that translated, when we were taking a look at the account, we noticed, hey, they have one video live right now in this particular platform account. And not only that, it's a minute long, and wow, we see all of these organic content partnerships going on that are not leveraged and paid. And so it just sort of backed up for us, as part of that process of like having real data that was super insightful. And it's sort of like you could see the sense of relief coming over the prospect space as well, of like, I just couldn't put my finger on it. This is what I've been trying to explain to my board for the past 6 months. And so that felt like just an unlock for us in the biz dev process. So that's a first example. And then for I'll share just another case study too, is Booyah is definitely known for performance media. And so one of the things that we pride ourselves in is like regardless of the media type, we are measuring the outcome, the business outcome. And so another client example of using the first party data upload is we noticed, hey, unlike some of the other clients that we see, print of all things, print and out of home, really, like this customer profile pays attention to, and we additionally were able to confirm some of their key DMAs. And so we knew during a key moment for them, we activated print buys and really like big full page with really large publications that again popped in the Resonate data. And we noticed when those print ads ran, just the level of site traffic that was experienced, not only site traffic spikes, but the level of engagement when those print ads ran and those out of home, specifically within those key markets, was so measurable, and just sort of proved out that like those are insights that we might not have had the guts to take had we not had the data to back it up. And so I would just say that was just another positive experience that we had with using the data that came out of Resonate.
Well, I mean, I think that's a sign also of you guys having a great infrastructure to bring in data like that, to bring in the site visitor data, the conversion data sets, as well as understanding when your own market, your ads were going to be in market and how those pieces are going to come together. Kind of orchestration of that for results and measurement is so hard to do. But I think it's great that you were able to build that story for the client and have them come along and kind of agree to that omni-channel test as part of that.
Yeah.
Now, as you guys are, and Dan, maybe I'll ask this question for you is, how are you seeing your clients ask you about AI and AI as a change agent for the agency? Are they leaning in on what you're doing from AI's perspectives as part of their validation for new business or existing customers?
Yeah, I would say Katie and I were talking about this earlier, and it's, I think the headlines are there, the hype is there, the realization that it is a change agent. But our clients haven't, we do net promoter scores, right? And so just to see how our clients are grading us, we did not hear an overwhelming, like, where is the AI, right? Where is the AI? But they do want us to still lead, have a perspective there, and then surface where AI is impacting the value that we're bringing for them. But they need it in real pragmatic moments, right? The term AI is such a broad stroke, right? And it can mean so many things to so many people. So we really try to, when we're trying to surface it for our clients, we're trying to show them like exactly, hey, this is the value that it's added, or this is, hey, where we can cut down this time, or hey, we're trying to increase a deliverable or a turnaround for a deliverable, but we're trying to still be transparent, like, hey, this is when we're starting to speed up here, right? The creative end of it's been interesting because we've had some clients love the turnaround for the ideation, but they are very resistant to have the final output be AI generated, right? And so there's still a lot of hesitancy to the Gen AI part of it for content creative, but the speed to which you get the ideas, I think, has been appreciated as a change agent. And I think you're seeing clients lean into that more and appreciate that. But then they like that human detail to it at the end, that human deliverable, right? That's been the balance that we've struck so far with our clients. And so far, so good. I think as far as how clients are still seeing it. Nobody's like, hey, are you just are you an AI agency yet? Are you just pure AI? We're not there yet. But I think the key thing is like, hey, just have that conversation, that perspective with your clients about where AI is actually helping the service that you're bringing to them, how it can speed up. And sometimes it adds on services for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point on where are you getting the acceleration and why is that acceleration not going to be used as a negotiating ploy to lower fees, right? But it's because of increased value, increased iteration, increased testing that you can do with that time savings, right? Obviously, no one wants to have AI used as a cudgel, reduce fees and shrink billings, but it is definitely part of that. I also think, Dan, you raised an interesting point around, we've probably talked about 4 different kinds of AI on this call, right? There's, and I think about it in terms of the use cases of that. There's generative AI, right? Which, I think folks are really familiar with. And ultimately, obviously, the open AIs, the GPTs, how are people going to use that? And I think there's 2 major use cases there. It's workflow reduction, and it's obviously creative generation are probably the 2 that we're seeing the most traction against. We talk a lot about AI and modeling, and it's really the approach of leveraging advanced ML-based models and AI models to eliminate and effectively, in some ways, overcome what a human would go develop as part of the modeling exercise in order to make those predictions. And we talk a lot about making sure clients understand where we're using machine learning as part of that process and where we're truly using AI, because they obviously always have questions on how are you making this recommendation for me? Is this a model, or is this truly a generative technology? And if it's generative, then there are entire class of advertisers who are very concerned, right? Financial services and health really want to make sure they understand what's going into that piece of things. So
yeah, I'd say like the one thing I'd add to that, like if you're thinking about short term and long term, right? Like short term, I think it's leaning in, cutting your teeth, and understanding how it impacts your clients' deliverables and business. Long term, the way I see it is the agency that can actually deliver consumer insights driven by AI research, right? And help both have that flow into predictive models, and then also help that power personalized campaigns while also delivering real human expertise, either in business or in vertical, really will thrive in the future. It's kind of like the parallel of like a law firm, right? You're going to go to them, they'll have AI powered research for legal advice, but you're going to get strategic legal counsel from your lawyer. And that's the value that I think in 3 years, like that's where everybody wants to build towards, right? The executional model, like if you are getting paid because you're good at execution and all that kind of stuff, that's going away. And so everybody's got to kind of like think how to move up the strategic ladder, how to put their value there. And today's the day. I think today's the day to start thinking about how do you go up one rung on the strategic value with your client.
Well, that gets me to our next question on the chat, which was, I'll ask both of you to chime in. It was, what's your recommendation on one thing for our audience to do tomorrow, right? How do you start to lean in on this idea of it's coming? So what's been your experience and what would be your recommendation to the audience?
Yeah, I'd say for mine, it's just a little bit of the room, right? Like I'd say carve out an hour a day just to go and pick up, do some research, get some training, challenge your team to come up with a new idea, build an idea list of how automation, AI can impact your business, your deliverables, and then think about, I mean, when you do that, when you take a task off, you have to think about how you add a strategic task in, right? And that really challenges some businesses who get so inundated with the execute, and all that stuff. Now you got to start thinking about how you turn that up and really add that strategic value. And then that starts opening up questions of like, well, what other tools do we need to do that, right? What don't we have in our quiver that we have to do that we need that really makes it strategic, right? And I know this is a Resonate webinar, but I gotta tell you, like in this moment of AI, it's nice that we've already invested in Resonate and we feel very confident in it, because we've already gotten a lot of strategic value out of it. But now, to be honest, like we're leaning into the tool even more, just because now we're getting a lot of those insights that we can be proactive with our clients with. So
I appreciate that. And Katie, do you want to add on what your one thought was there?
Like, I think Dan took it from like just how we think about it internally. And then I always just think like, because I oversee our client service, just like, if you are feeling like if you haven't had that conversation with your client yet, call your client, have that conversation, make sure that you are using tools like Resonate to act quickly on the market changes, and make sure that, if you've developed expertise in a certain vertical, like make sure that you're bringing those benchmarks to the table, and just help your client identify like the threats in the market and how they are going to overcome the current headwinds.
No, I think those are really good approaches for us to offer up to the audience here. I'd say from from my perspective, having worked across a number of agencies, the biggest piece I think is taking that risk and letting your team start to play around with the tools, getting some company licenses and asking them to say, what is possible here, right? Go think about what's possible. Frankly, ask the tool what's possible. How could I do this? How could I do that, right? And because what's going to happen is that what we've seen internally, what we've seen other agencies tell us they're doing is they're asking people to go and just think about the job they're most familiar with, which is the thing they do every day, and looking at ways, can I make some small improvements happen here? And it's that kind of thought against, specifically around the generative AI solutions, that seems to be leading to some some really interesting time savings, right? And you're seeing it in all the new companies that are spinning up in the AI space, whether it's prompt engineering solutions for new business pitches or market research based on prompts. The market's evolving really quickly, and the day of an analyst maybe taking 5 to 6 hours to go scour eMarketer and Google and a whole bunch of other places to build out consumer profiles and build out supporting documentation. I mean, that's now being done in 30 seconds of a prompt and and a really good brief that starts to come out that gives you the bones and the outline. So for me, and my recommendation for everyone on the line is give your team permission to go play with it, right? Go get a little business license. Certainly set up a policy so they don't dump all your private client information in, but kind of get started with that. Thinking back to the consumer confidence piece as we get closer to time here, do you guys have a prediction on how agency budgets from clients are going to shift over the next few months? Are we entering into recession planning, or are we going to hold the line on some optimism through the rest of 25?
I'm optimistic. I am just optimistic that there's not, maybe the increase that was originally predicted won't be there, but I'm holding out hope for just reducing waste and using it in a smarter way so that the new customer acquisition, for example, doesn't fall apart, and we're not just relying on low funnel media, and it's up to us to go find that waste and recommend how they're gonna bail out of it.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, I'm always hope for the best, plan for the worst, so I think you always kind of make sure you're ready to pounce. And it's been 40 minutes here. Something could have happened while we're on this call that impacted the stock market. But like, you got to be nimble. You got to be adaptable. You have to be adaptable for your clients. If your clients see you ahead of it, being adaptable, being proactive, they will have confidence to weather the storm with you if that storm comes. And if it stays off on the horizon, then you hit the gas, right? And so that's I think we're a performance marketing agency, so we're kind of always using that. But I would just really recommend proactivity as much as possible with your clients during these times.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic feedback for the audience. The times of change, it's really important to navigate, right? To help clients understand, to help answer those questions that they might have, and to be leaning in on anticipating those questions maybe before you're asked, and looking to come to them with here's what we think is going to happen, and here's how we're going to help you navigate this, so that you can kind of continue to drive to that business success and the outcome that you guys have been talking about here. This has been a really fascinating conversation for the last 40 minutes. Really appreciate Katie and Dan, you guys joining us today to have this conversation and being open and sharing, with your peers across the agency space on what's working and what's not for Booyah. Are there any questions from the audience, Kayla and team, that we've gotten yet that we should dive into?
Not yet, but if anybody does have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A portion and we will answer those.
Give ourselves 30 seconds for folks to generate a question there. one of the pieces that I think, that you both mentioned at different times was the importance of kind of first party data from clients. Are you seeing a rise in clients looking to leverage data clean rooms and solutions like that in how they interact with their first party data? Or is it predominantly still happening through a LiveRamp or another type of onboarding partner?
Absolutely.
I've seen it.
Go ahead. Yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I've seen like, the traditional onboarding partner thing probably still has the traction. Data enrichment is really, you get to data clean rooms, data enrichment is becoming more online, right? Especially, as we were batting down the hatches for Cookie to finally die and all that stuff, thinking about how our clients capture first party data, what data they have, how do we add to it, how are we able to potentially help them segment, and build strategic targets is huge. That'll be even more emphasis here. I think that's coming more and more online for our clients. Really, that data enrichment piece and that targeting piece is huge, right? That builds in that personalization. So it hasn't been so much in the data clean room space as much as like the need and the outcome we're starting to hear more of.
Yeah, I think we've seen, I think the loss of the cookie started to think about an alternative ID for our industry. And so we've seen a lot of our partners leverage, whether it's a Snowflake clean room or a Habu or other approach, or whether it's still just leveraging S3 in a box account. But leveraging hashed email is one of the primary tokens that are out there right now as a way to transition data and keep it in that pseudo-anonymous state between entities. So one of the things we're always looking at is how quickly our services like that kind of go mainstream, where they're the dominant form of kind of data transfer or not, as opposed to cookie-based transfers that I think I'd say we're starting to see the shift. We've got two quick questions that I'll tackle for the group, and then we can see where we are. The first one was a question around real-time psychographics and data. So Mitch, there's roughly there's about 15,000 total attributes inside of the Resonate Ignite platform tied to 250 million consumer profiles. So in terms of psychographics and demographics, it's a couple of thousand attributes specifically around how and why consumers make decisions, what they buy, really we focused a lot on what consumers value. So this idea of what is the core mechanisms why consumers are going to make decisions. And I think, Katie, you mentioned that with the idea of they wanted to build their confidence through hair products.
Yes.
It's getting deeper into more of the root questions than necessarily, hey, I buy hair products because I want to look good, but I buy hair products because they help me feel better about myself, right? And getting to that level of nuance and understanding.
And down to the level of how and where and what influences them when they are ready to purchase a product. And what we've been impressed with too is just like the breadth of verticals that you guys cover. So it's auto, it's health and beauty, it's financial services, like it's very robust.
Well, and I think we have thank you for that. We have one really great question here on what are predictions for agencies that choose not to adopt AI solutions, right? Or are going to be laggards in that. And I mean, I think we're all, there's a saying credited to Hemingway, right? That change happens gradually, then all of a sudden. And I think that, you might envision that this AI change for how agencies operate and really how every business is going to start to operate is right now we've been watching this thing called AI coming in closer and closer to us. And it's about to smack us all in the face, right? Like we're watching it, we're like, hey, that's AI, and then it's going to hit us, right? And the question is that some folks are going to be ready to make the catch, so to speak, and others are going to get hit right in the face. And I think it's going to be a really disappointing change for folks that don't start to lean in to the staff acceleration, to the workflow benefits that are going to happen, and being able to successfully envision a world where things just work differently. Right. And I think they work very fundamentally differently. And probably the closest analog in my career is going to be the rise of, the browser as a primary mechanism for how software and interactions occurred. AI is going to probably be the same thing at the level of scale, I think, for me. And I hate to date myself even with that reference, but I could go all the way back to VHS tapes. I don't know, Katie, Dan, if you wanted to add anything to that in closing about being a laggard around AI.
I would just say, just exactly what you said, it's coming or it is here. The velocity is the thing that is the thing I think is spinning people's heads. How many those new AI startups are coming out and how many different tools and solutions that are out there. Um, that's why you have to kind of lean in now. You just have to lean in and cut your teeth now and get a good understanding of that. Um, you might need to assign ownership over AI in your agency. So somebody knows that they have the ball, knows that they're trying to get this across teams. Because the ground is moving and you got to move with it. And so this is probably one that I think we're going to find one of the highest speed changes that we've seen in the past. I've been with Booyah for 20 years. Like this is moving fast. And so it's time to get moving with it.
Well, Katie and Dan, thank you guys so much for joining us today and for all the attendees on the line. Really exciting to have this chance to have a dialogue with you on a Monday. And let's all fingers crossed that, Dan, over the last 40 minutes, consumer confidence has gone up, interest rates have gone down, and the forecasts are back on track for 2025. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.